Okay, hello everybody, wherever you are. Welcome to Fanisko's Learning from Leaders podcast, where we talk about fan engagement or digital fan engagement per se in detail. And we are really honored and privileged to be joined here today, by Nishant. Nishant is the director of operations and marketing at Major League Rugby. Nishant, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Venu. Thanks a lot for having me.
Such a pleasure. And first things first, I hope you have been keeping well with all the craziness that we have had in the last 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, cliched as it may sound, it's been challenging both from a work and personal front, but I've been fortunate enough to stick with Major League Rugby throughout, and we just completed a great season as well. So all things considered, can't complain.
Really good to hear that. And Nishant is based out of Vancouver, Canada, if I'm not wrong, right?
That's right.
Perfect. All right. So I hope you're keeping cool in the West Coast. I heard it's really hot in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, being from India, the temperatures aren't things that I'm not used to, but certainly for this part of the world, yeah, look, it's probably for another podcast, but quite depressing the heat and what the effect it's having on the environment around.
Yeah, absolutely understand. So, for everybody watching, just a brief introduction of Nishant before we start. As we already know, Nishant is the Director of Operations and Marketing at Major League Rugby. And in his role, he oversees all aspects of the competition and also guides the marketing strategy. And he had initially launched New York's first professional rugby team, and he also moved to MLR in 2018, and now he continues to building the league through its early years. So, welcome, Nishant, once again. And we have a few questions lined up for you for today's podcast. And would love to hear your experience of digital fan engagement, of what you have seen in the last 1 year, in terms of what others are doing, what are the best strategies which have worked, what were the challenges, and of course, what you have been doing, yourself in the Major League Rugby tournament as well. So yeah, we'll just start off with a few questions. The first one is on the screen, which is, how have teams and leagues pivoted to digital fan engagement in the past year with the pandemic causing disruptions? So this is actually, kind of a cliched question now if you have seen it over the last 1 year. But then, of course, it's always good to know, how people have viewed this and what kind of experiences they have had and how, the world is kind of adapting towards this. So all over to you.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there because when you sent me this question, I could pick from any one of thousands of answers that that probably say the same thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that anyway.
Hmm.
Um, Look, the trend towards digital fan engagement in general and digital everything really. I mean, ticketing, broadcast, etc. That was a trend that was happening anyway, right? I think um, with better technology and Gen Z and all those things that was something that was going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. But I think because of the pandemic, sports properties were just forced to forced to accelerate those trends, and oftentimes that's a good thing for an industry because I think generally as a sport, um, with the sports industry we've been behind the curve, with things like data and analytics and things like that. So being forced to innovate and disrupting the norm of traditional in stadium engagement has been a welcome refresher. Um, it's also been hard to keep up with the number of things people are trying,
Hmm.
because it's a bit of the wild west in terms of the landscape and the tools available and the strategies behind them. But I've really enjoyed, particularly the 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 things that the NBA have done. Obviously,
Hmm.
they're a leader in this space,
Yeah.
even before COVID hit. And I think even just things like the simple, I think it was the Michelob courtside
Yeah.
fan experience. I thought they executed that far better than any other league, even in their bubble in Orlando. just being able to see fans' faces,
Yep.
and them cheering, and then celebrities watching. I thought they did a fantastic job of recreating that stadium experience.
Yep.
So that's one part of it. I feel is recreating that stadium experience at home, so
Mm-hmm.
that there is a communal aspect to viewing sport.
Yep.
But then I think equally we've got to start thinking differently as well about how we engage the fans at home. And again, I'll go to the NBA for an example of that, which is Top Shot, right? Just
Yep.
phenomenal execution, early adoption there by the league. Actually met someone who works with Dapper Labs here in Vancouver, and some of the things that they've done with that. I mean, who could ever imagine that a commonly available highlight would be worth 250,000 US dollars? Right?
Yep.
So there's some other elements there that they've other streams that they've broken into there, which is one
Yes.
is creating a marketplace and also gone into the world of speculative investments, which it's just
Yeah.
fascinating, right? What a sports properties become. So I think those are the kind
Yep.
of two things that I've enjoyed keeping track of as much as possible. One is how people are taking the in stadium experience home, but then also just totally out of the box ideas like Top Shot.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned about the sports industry being a little left behind in terms of how technologically advanced they were, and how innovative they were when it came to these kind of things, right? Before the COVID pandemic struck. So yeah, I think that's a classic example where even with we at Fanisko have faced in terms of we had a few clients and prospects who were like looking at this as a nice to have thing, say in 2017, 2018, but last year we actually got them and converted them into clients because they came back to us saying that boss, we need something, can you do something for us? So that's how the
And can
tide
you
has
do it
changed.
by and can you
Yeah.
do it by tomorrow, right? Yeah.
We needed it yesterday, so that's how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly, yeah. And I think another interesting point there, Nishad, is the NFT space, which you were kind of referring to, the way it has developed in the last 1 year. Who would have imagined, right, say a couple of years ago, that this would be a huge thing in 2020, 2021, right? So
Yeah.
that is something which is
Yeah.
fascinating to see, the NFT and now the crypto space as well, both complementing each other. So that's something which is kind of interesting to see, and how this will kind of pan out in the world of digital fan engagement. So that would be quite
That's right.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
perfect. Yep. So I think that kind of brings us to the next question, Nishant, in terms of now we spoke about how teams are pivoting towards digital, but in terms of use cases, I know you've mentioned NBA a couple of times, but is there anything else that you have specific in mind as an example, which really struck your chord, and you kind of which struck a chord with you, and you kind of felt that this is the benchmark that all teams need to follow, or this is something which is phenomenal, and could be followed by teams worldwide.
Um, yeah, actually, I have a few examples. I've honestly been fascinated by all of it. I'm a
Hmm.
bit of a geek when it comes to these kind of technological innovation. So I don't know if there's one that stands out above the others, but
Hmm.
obviously being in rugby, I follow a lot of international rugby as well.
Hmm.
And rugby comparatively has also been sort of behind the curve of other sports. But I was really impressed by what the British and Irish Lions did on their tour of South Africa. So for those
Hmm.
not familiar with this, every 4 years, um, a combined team from England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland take on one of the key Southern Hemisphere teams, either Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And it's usually a 4 to 6 week tour. They play 10 matches, three of which
Hmm.
are against the national team. It's
Hmm.
a real sort of landmark in the rugby calendar. It sort of happens in alternately with the World Cup every 2 years. Um, so especially this year, something like that, which is primarily like a touring, is meant for fans to tour with the team, and you have hordes of Britishers going over to New Zealand, South Africa, and having a great time for a month. This year they couldn't do that because
Yep.
South Africa was shut down.
Yep.
But some of the improvements that the Lions made to their digital presence, both web and mobile based, were remarkable. First of all, just the viewing capabilities for fans. I mean, you had to have a subscription to particular broadcasters, but if you had that, you could literally switch between every single camera angle you wanted in the stadium.
Yep.
And for that to happen quite seamlessly, also being able to pull in stats within that same screen while you're watching the game was something that I was really impressed by. And then I combined that with their fan portal as well. They built what on the face of it is a pretty simple fan portal. It's got a bunch of challenges that attract UGC, and they curate it and showcase it really well. But I think the way they pushed for that was particularly interesting to me. The kind of incentives they had, for instance, just making sure that fans had a real interaction and engagement with players through those platforms. I think those were the things that I really enjoyed, and it was that holistic approach from the Lions that both struck me by surprise because they're a rugby property and we've traditionally been behind. But also, I just think it was a great replacement for people who couldn't tour. Lastly, I think Formula One as well did an amazing job with their driver engagement. And also, I think as the drivers would walk into the pit areas, they'd have cameras set up with fans and or family. I thought those kind of moments were priceless, and these are kind of things that are fairly simple to execute, but just when well thought through, they can really make a difference from an engagement point of view, fan to property, but also you put a sponsor's name behind it, and they're most definitely going to be happy with you.
Correct. And I think another similar instance which comes to mind when you were speaking about the rugby league is, in soccer, in the Bundesliga, I believe, wherein they had the option of the fan watching the game, with fake crowd noise or the actual noise in the stadium where the players are talking to each other, right? So that was also quite interesting. And that actually brought the fans closer to the action, right? When they could understand how the communication goes on between players and the coach shouting from the dugout as well. So that's something quite fascinating, which may not have been possible before with the actual crowd in the stadium. So that's something which is quite different to see.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're spot on there, and just the fact that this is another digital innovation that I wanted to stay away from, but since you touched on it, I thought the crowd noise being piped in for all sports properties across the world was remarkable. I mean, you wouldn't know that there are no fans in the stands, right? Exactly. The audio tech this year were probably in high demand, and kudos to them.
Absolutely, and it's not an easy thing to do, trust me, to kind of program it in a way that every event is programmed differently for the crowd noise. So it's a big challenge. Producer's nightmare. All right. So that brings us to the next question, Nishant. And now we have spoken about what has happened till now. I think the next question focuses towards what are the futuristic trends that you see, or what you foresee as what will come up in the next few years, which may not have happened till date, or which has huge potential to kind of disrupt this economy of digital fan engagement.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the crystal ball, I wouldn't be giving you my secret, but this is a space that's fascinating to watch. I mean, I know you guys have at Fanisko as well have gone through evolution in your products and offerings. Built, just trying to both keep up and get ahead of trends. So first
Yep.
of all, kudos to you guys. But the first thing I think in the immediate term, what I think is going to be important is to one, make sure that the good parts of the in-stadium experience and
Mm-hmm.
watching sports live
Yep.
are brought back, and fans, because we need some of that
Yep.
long established interactions,
Yep.
to make sure that we have some sort of predictability as a sports industry, keeping fans engaged and keeping their attention.
Yep.
Which naturally means that we've got to supplement it
Yep.
with digital tools, and then I think the key is going to be in striking a nice balance between
Yep.
the two,
Yep.
so that you're not losing the charm of sport,
Mm-hmm.
which is that it's live, which is that it's a communal experience.
Correct.
But also you're making sure that you're relatable to an audience that's only going to get younger and more tech friendly. Right? So I think that's
Absolutely.
kind of going to be the challenge in the near term, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next breakthrough to sort of look out for, is one in broadcast.
Mm.
I don't think we've had a major breakthrough. Yeah, we've seen some things in 3D, VR, but nothing that's really been adopted widely.
Yep.
And that there's been a lot of improvement to the 2D experience. I mean, some of
Yep.
those cameras, the 8K cameras at the NBA Finals and the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl, and all of that, it's wonderful.
Yep.
But I don't think we've had that widespread adoption of any particular viewing experience. So I'm really interested in keeping an eye out
Mm-hmm.
on what that's going to be.
Mm.
Um, that's one bit of it, and then I think the other one is just the gambling and the gamification space, right? I mean,
The betting.
ad
Yeah.
nauseum, yeah,
Yeah.
ad nauseum at the moment.
Yep.
Folks are chomping at the bit in the US, and it's funny because people in the US do talk about it like it's this new thing, but really it's
Yep.
been around in Europe and Australia for ages, right? So,
Correct.
but the US and North America does do things bigger, and and the sports market here is obviously far more developed. So I think the kind of tools, prop bets,
Yep.
companies, and the economics of that is going to be fascinating, and again something that I'd be watching out for, and something that every sports property has got to get within their arsenal. It's going to have to be a tool that they offer, so that sponsors, so that they can attract, enhance fan engagement, but also attract sponsors who
Yep.
want to get behind it.
Yep, absolutely right. I think the betting industry is definitely something to watch out for, especially now with the pseudo betting space growing in the fantasy leagues all over the world. That's something which is kind of challenging the primary betting industry. And there's
Yeah,
a divide, and it's an interesting space to watch out for. And now with crypto and NFTs coming into space, right? That's kind of causing a lot of disruption in this space already. So I think it would be
that's right.
interesting to watch in terms of how all these things is amalgamated into one ecosystem, and what kind of comes out of it. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's quite interesting.
agreed.
Yeah, interesting. All right. So now coming down to business in terms of what have you been doing? So the next question is, with regards to Major League Rugby, what have you guys done in the last 1 year, or what have you planned, and what do you foresee as some of the initiatives that you're going to do?
Yeah, so we've when the pandemic first hit,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that we went after was MLR virtual.
Mm-hmm.
It seems ages ago right now, but that month was absolute chaos. There was a meeting as soon as the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Hey guys, do we think we can pull this off?" And I don't think anyone was more than 50% sure that we could, but we said we'd do it anyway.
Hmm.
And so we launched a 3-week virtual competition. We were actually one of the first leagues to do that.
Yep.
And it took, a crazy amount of work, obviously, from five or six of us in the office, putting our heads together, sourcing expertise, sourcing PlayStations at a time when they were, really in demand.
Yep.
Driving to like Walmart's in the middle of nowhere because we get this, and
Yep.
others were all closed down or out of stock. So those are really interesting challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we put a stake in the ground in by saying that we're willing to be nimble, flexible, and we're willing to look at things that keep our audience engaged, whether we're playing rugby on the field or
Hmm.
not. Since then, obviously there was um, a lot of uncertainty about the season,
Mm-hmm.
and where we'd actually end up with the matches that we were playing. So it was
Yep.
crucial to us to make sure that we took some time to enhance our just online presence, and we're still at the start of that journey, right? So we did reach a partnership with Genius Sports to be our official
Oh.
dating
Mm-hmm.
betting data provider.
Yeah.
And the other thing we did was actually build an MLR app for the first time. It was something that our fans had been crying out since year one, and if I was
Ab-
launching a sports property today, I wouldn't do it without having mobile first.
Absolutely.
But for us, it worked out well because we really got a sense of what was needed in the app,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so we ticked the boxes in terms of your live match stats, and team profiles, and schedules, and high video highlights, and all of that. And
Yep.
the next phase is to make it a real fan engagement hub. We've started a few things. We have a fan portal, and we have AR campaigns that we run with the teams, and which will be rolled out to sponsors as well. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a few different things in the pipeline, but really for us, while the growing demographic of our fans skews younger, there is an
Yep.
established older demographic that is more comfortable on desktops and traditional linear TV.
Yep.
That's a switch that we're very conscious of. We need to
Yep.
make that switch carefully so that we don't alienate those fans.
Correct. Yeah, that's the challenge, right? Everywhere, with in all sport, especially when it comes to catering to the existing fan base, which is kind of from the yesteryears who have your season tickets, and you will always turn up for game after game, and then to the newer ones who are always on their mobile phones and kind of roaming on the streets watching a game, or just watching the highlights package and being done with it. So that's a mix which you need to be really careful about in terms of how do you cater to both
Right.
segments, which you have really brought it out nicely. So interesting. And, there's one more thing which I wanted to ask you before we end. Obviously, this is with regards to MLR, this being a challenger league, and, it's not, obviously, with all due respect, not as big as the other leagues which we already spoke about. And, how does that fit into the picture when it comes to, fan engagement strategies? What are those challenges which kind of, come into play when you consider digital fan engagement for a league such as yours?
Yeah. It goes back to the end of my last answer, which is,
Mm-hmm.
one is identifying the demand and the need,
Mm-hmm.
which is, how much of this is actually necessary if our established fan base
Mm-hmm.
skews older, and like you said, turns up for game after game,
Yep.
versus the younger audience.
Yep.
So I'd say, digital engagement is absolutely essential, and we have to be thinking about it. But
Yep.
we're still at the stage where tickets drive our business,
Yep.
and for us, that's the bread and butter, and so we've got to focus on that. And if
Mm-hmm.
there are digital strategies and engagement tools that help us sell more tickets, we're all ears.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, given the small resources we have at the teams and the league,
Yep.
sometimes it becomes challenging to focus on digital engagement when you've got the bread and butter of tickets that you've got to make sure you're successful there. So that's one of the challenges we face. The other is the plethora of tools that are available and in companies, right? For the bigger leagues, obviously they've got well-established systems, and it's easy to get companies to adjust to their systems, processes, and the existing technologies that they use. Whereas for challenger leagues, much like ours, it's often a patchwork of technology providers. This platform can do all of these things except for one, and then this platform can do that one thing but not others. So that's a challenge that we constantly navigate, and hence we've been very, very slow and deliberate in choosing our providers, because whoever we go with, we want that to one, ideally be a long-term relationship, 3, 5, who knows, even more. But even if that relationship does not continue, we want to be able to take those tools and easily migrate. So that's another priority for us. And then it's actually the first factor, but I bring it up last. Budgets are always small, so we're always looking for the most bang for our buck. That often means we're prevented from going after the latest things. Like, we wouldn't be able to run a top shot marketplace like the NBA right now, but these things are becoming increasingly more accessible and available to folks. So we're constantly keeping an eye out for those that really provide value for the cost we incur.
Interesting. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's a fine balance, right, between what's needed in terms of what's a must-have and a nice-to-have. So that's where you kind of have to tread that line and focus on what are the quick wins and what are the futuristic initiatives that will kind of bear fruits in maybe 2 to 5 years time. So I think that's
exactly right.
That's the hardest decision to make as a marketing director or director of operations, or even the league commissioner, right? So that's something which I completely understand and kind of empathize with you on that aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, great, Nishant. I think this was a great conversation. Thanks a lot for your time. I think you brought out certain aspects which we kind of discuss and hear day in and day out in our conversations at Fanisko. But again, to the general public, from a point of view of a person who's actually heading the marketing for a league, that's something which is really, really useful, because gives a lot of insights, gives a lot of value to understand fan engagement in detail and what are the challenges from the league standpoint as well as from an overall industry standpoint. So I think that's something which you covered beautifully. So thanks a lot for that. Really enjoyed talking to you today.
Likewise, Venu. Keep up the good work that you guys are doing, and really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thanks, Nishant, and we'll be in touch. Cheers.